Assalamu alaikum.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, Sister Sahar.
How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, we could begin, inshallah. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday. So grateful, alhamdulillah. We are so honored here to have Crescent Private Wealth join us. We love Crescent, and so it's such a pleasure to have them with us. Especially, we have Brother Mohammed Dahnoon with us and Brother Kashif Osman. They are both wealth advisors from Crescent. So I'll begin by sharing a little bit about who Crescent is, and then they will take over. But this is also an interactive session. We really want you guys to feel comfortable asking questions in the chat. Sometimes throughout the webinar, I will be asking questions myself. I'll be asking some polls. This is an opportunity for you to, if you have anything on the top of your mind about halal investing, about Islamic finance, about your wealth management. We have two people with us who are deeply passionate and expertise in the fields. So whatever questions we can answer in 1 hour, we will, inshallah. Anytime if there's something that we need to get back to you on about, we can totally email you. And you're part of this community right now, inshallah. So please feel empowered and feel safe to share your questions with us. So, a little bit about Crescent Private Wealth. They serve individuals, families, and business owners navigating wealth with intention. So, their approach evolves by they blend tradition with innovation and they try to meet the unique needs of today's clients. So, they help you grow, preserve, and give with meaning based on your personalized financial journey. So, whether you're navigating shifting markets, whether you're building a legacy or aligning your investments with faith and purpose, they bring clarity and guidance so you can move forward with confidence. And their true purpose is grounded in trust, care, and the belief that wealth is a tool for building something greater. So these principles have guided Crescent Private Wealth since their founding, and they continue to shape how they serve each generation. And I'll give a little introduction of myself. So I'm Nusrat. I'm the head of education at Musaffa. And Musaffa is a halal investment fintech based in New York City. And our mission is to make halal investing accessible and to become an ecosystem for people to learn about halal investing. And we're also rolling out a trading platform, inshallah. So now you can actually trade directly using Musaffa. So I will hand it over to both Mohammed and Kashif. If you want, you can share a little bit about your background, about Crescent's story, about your own individual stories. Um, you can share a little bit about how Crescent helps clients, what people can expect from you, and then I can ask you questions myself.
Sure, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We'll start just with the introductions, and then once we both introduce ourselves, we'll get into, what Crescent does and how we serve our clients. But my name is Mohammed Dahnoon. It's a pleasure to be with you all today, and we appreciate Musaffa putting this together. I think it's going to be super helpful and valuable. A little bit about myself is that I graduated from NC State University, so local to North Carolina, with a degree in finance. I then went on to receive my SEC registration so I can get into this field and alhamdulillah be able to serve Muslim clients, families, and business owners all along.
Jazakallah khair, Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Kashif Osman. I come from a nonprofit background. I spent about 7 or 8 years working at my local masjid as well as various community nonprofits in the area. So I understood first and foremost how important values are when we give on one side and how we can put barakah in our money by giving, but then also some of the community struggles. I have a degree in biochemistry and political science, but I've always had a passion for finance. So I have a global background as well. I grew up in South Africa for many years, and I like to see the whole perspective, understand the macro effects of our finances. And I think that's perfect for Mustafa's audience, where I understand a lot of individuals here are joining from across the world. So Jazakallah khair for joining, whatever time of day it is. We're excited that you are here to join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you. It's such an honor to have you both. Maybe you can start off with like, how does Crescent typically help start people with their wealth planning, wealth management, and just their investing journey?
Yeah. Kashif, do you mind if I take this one?
Please.
Yeah, so how does Crescent work? What is Crescent? What's our purpose? So at the very core, Crescent's purpose is number one, to serve the Muslim community. We live in a country, we're based in the US and a world, to be honest, where Islamic finance is not placed on a pedestal, you know. We don't always have the opportunity to invest in what we call faith-based opportunities and invest with what our religion tells us to do. So that's Crescent's purpose is to, break that ice in this industry, in this financial industry. And Musaffa does the same thing, where they're breaking that ice to allow Muslims to feel comfortable and confident with their decisions. So the first part of the journey is just understanding our client stories, understanding the family stories, you know. How does finance feel to you? What point in your life are you at where, you start to ask these questions? Have you just started your career? Are you starting a 401k? Or are you on the later end of your career where you're thinking about retirement? And will I have the money to do the things I want to do when I retire? So that's really how we start at the basics. And I know Kashif loves to talk about budgeting and building out plans for clients, so I'll let him pivot into that, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, Muhammad. I think you hit the nail on the head. And the core of what Crescent is, and very similar to Musaffa, is where you are by Muslim for Muslim. That end to end, you have that same tradition and culture, but are approaching today's modern issues with some innovation. So, a core to that is understanding financial literacy. And I think over the past, 24 months, especially, our communities across the world have understood the importance of understanding their money, that we need to know how much is coming into our bank accounts and how much is leaving our bank account. So we always strive to ensure everyone has a budget, has a financial plan to help them reach their goals. One thing I'm most passionate about is the concept of FIRE, which is financial independence, retire early. Everyone says, will I have enough money for retirement? I say, let's reframe that. Could we retire earlier? Could we, instead of saying 65, let's look at 55? What will be the steps to take us there and get us there and ensure that our money is not just invested, but invested with purpose. So that's kind of what we do at Crescents. And we love to use Musaffa's tools to vet companies and vet stocks. And we have a wonderful activity that Mohammed will lead us on in a few moments of how we go about the process of vetting these companies to ensure that there is faith with purpose.
Yeah. And inshallah, in a couple minutes, we'll get into that activity, which will really break down exactly how we vet these companies and how Musaffa has helped that and how Musaffa can actually do the job for you. But right before we get into that, I just want to press a little bit more about what happens after, we meet and we speak to our clients and we build out their budgets and we talk about money in, money out, as Gash have talked about. I think this is the most important step of everyone's financial journey. And it's really where we come into play is investing with intention and staying the course, right? So when it comes to you're ready to actually invest your money, making sure that you're invested in things that you feel comfortable from an Islamic perspective and from a personal moral perspective, right? We live in a world where, these massive corporations that we invest in, they're not all necessarily haram. We can take advantage of the opportunity to make money, but we just need to be sure that we're making money in the most faith-based way possible. And then lastly, and the most important thing is staying the course. A lot of people like to think their financial advisors just pick their stocks for them and they're sitting watching a screen all day. I think that might be the smallest part of our job. Most important thing is being there for the client, being in the corner for the client when life comes about and they have financial questions and they need to make financial decisions. And also being that person that's there for them to ensure that they're sticking to their plan, right? There's times when the market wants to react a certain way and people get emotional, and it's your money. It's absolutely understandable. But that's why we're here, is to stick to that plan, be disciplined, and inshallah, reach that fire that Gasheth loves to mention.
I feel like fire is maybe an inside joke also between you both. Considering
Yeah.
how much you're smiling. But yeah, I mean, we all want to retire early. Who wants to keep working for the rest of their life? But I'm so happy. Brother Ahmed mentioned a question in the chat. Um, Before we go to Brother Ahmed's question, I hope that's okay, Brother Ahmed. We're definitely gonna get to it, but I want to ask, I feel like a lot of people are beginners in this space. And so when they come to you, what are they coming to you with? Like what feelings do they bring? What questions do they bring? Where are they in that stage? And then how do you then tackle that? So what's your method for making them take that next step? So first question is, what have you seen in the field of like what are people bringing to you guys, and then how do you then go and help them?
That's a fantastic question. Thank you so much, Nusrat. Clients come to us from a variety of backgrounds.
Mm,
And I'll call out two examples of people I had this week to kind of walk you through play by play what happened with them. And I really loved these two cases especially. So one was a young lady, about 32 years old, had worked for a few years and had an employee stock purchase plan. So she had maybe about 20 stocks worth of Apple. And she was in a situation right now where she lost her job, was in unemployment, didn't know what to do. I've had a little bit of money. I'm on unemployment. I don't really know where my money's going. I don't really have a stable form of income. What do I do next? What do I sell my Apple stock? Do I keep my Apple stock? What happens? So we sit with her and we say, okay, let's kind of explore and explain where you're going. 5 years down the road from now, inshallah, you have a job, inshallah, you have a future lined up and you have a pathway there. What are the steps to get there? So our first step to her was, okay, you kind of need this emergency money. This is all the money you have is these 20 or so Apple stocks. I know you love them. I know you're excited about the concept of investing, but this is your emergency money and you are running into an emergency right now. Versus another case, we have some individuals come. I had a wonderful lady in her 60s come to us. Alhamdulillah, husband had worked for many years and they have a happy budding relationship. And she had about 300, $400,000 in cash just sitting in her bank account. And she said, I love my husband. I love my community, but I want to feel that I am taken care of in case something happens, in case that my husband may fall into something. What can I do? So we sat with her, and it was more of the investment side. The first one was let's build a financial plan. Let's pick you up by your bootstraps, get you ready to go to the next step. The second one was let's go find the Sharia compliant investments that are aligned with your faith values and align with your risk tolerances, because that's a huge component of this as well. We can't be putting our clients, and most people should not be investing in meme stocks, rather long-term solid plays. So for her, we started with let's invest the capital, put the money inside, but then come to money in a month's time and let's talk about where exactly you want to be spending this money. Do you want to maybe send some back home, build a school in your family's name, build a clinic? Do you want to save some for charity locally? Do you want to give some to your heirs? So we take a very holistic approach, but the key is kind of a discovery session, understanding where a client is today and understanding where they may want to go, and then helping to kind of be the catalyst to get to that point that they want to go to in the future, all with purpose and all with intentionality.
Oh, I love that. SubhanAllah. Thank you for sharing the two case studies. I feel like many of us can relate to parts of it. So thank you. What have you been, and I'll ask this to you, Brother Mohammed, what have you been seeing in the space about, it's one thing for people to want Sharia compliant investments, right? But now we're seeing this like a different aspect of this value aligned when it comes to ethics and ESG and um, the not just whether a company is financially Sharia compliant, but how are they ethically? What are you seeing in the space when it comes to that, and how is Crescent helping?
Absolutely. That's an amazing question. And it's probably one of the highest volume questions we've gotten in the last, especially in the last 24 months with, everything happening in the world from Palestine to Sudan
Mm.
to Southeast Asia and so many things going on. It's definitely been one of the biggest questions. And this also relates kind of to Brother Ahmed's question about the AOFI standards, right? Do we follow the AOFI standards? So the AOFI standards were set from a purely financial and accounting perspective. So they didn't initially account for these kinds of questions, right? Are we investing in something ethical? But as Muslims, we know that we don't want to invest in something, we don't want our money supporting something that is harming other Muslims or people all around the world, right? So this is something that we've started to implement as soon as this question started to come up, is going that extra step and identifying if any of the investments that are already considered faith-based and check off on all the screeners, are they in line with what we believe in as Muslims? So you'll get a lot of situations where you have these, for example, defense contractors or government contractors who support in some way. And I do want to emphasize that sometimes it's hard to identify because sometimes this information isn't public. I'll give you a really good example of a stock in the Magnificent Seven, one of the largest companies in the world, Microsoft, which was a Sharia compliant investment by all aspects, until, and I wouldn't want to say that it was crossed off, but when news was leaked that they were supporting a certain division in the IDF with surveillance, there was a massive story about it, and it immediately got on people's radars. This isn't ethical. I don't want to invest in Microsoft. So it's definitely something we keep a super close eye on, and it's becoming a large concern in the field. And alhamdulillah, we've done our best to try to identify those and purify people's portfolios from them.
Awesome. Jazakallah khair. Another question that was actually put in when from the Google Form signups, um, and it was about this question of how do I know that my money will actually grow? A lot of, we have, which is a general question across investing, right? We want, and kind of hits also what Brother Ahmed put in about investment returns. And so maybe you can share about how you communicate to Muslim investors about um, just building wealth, like actually seeing returns.
Oh, yeah. Would you like it, Kashif, or do you want me to take this one?
You can by all means take this one.
Sure. So at the end of the day, and I always make this joke with Kashif, is the most important figure at the end of the day, even though it might not be what we say is, but in our hearts is that we make money, right?
Hmm.
Alhamdulillah, in the past, we've done pretty well at Crescent, without getting into any numbers. But in general, if you take a look at the financial markets all across the world, we're living in an age where technology and specifically AI is becoming so revolutionary that, and I might get a little bit technical here, that the profit margins of all these companies, not just in the US, all across the world, have risen significantly. Now, high profit margins leads to the stock goes up, the company is doing better. So what we've seen, and at least since the financial crisis, is a slow and sometimes fast rise in the price of equities all across the world. But really, what I want to emphasize is the importance is we don't try to time the market. The market has its cycles. Things like COVID happen, and the market wipes off 30% of its gains in the matter of a week. Things like tariffs happen, where one decision in the United States could lead to a falling out of the financial system for about a month. I'm not sure if you guys were following in April, but we saw major companies wipe out 10 to 20% of their gains on the year. And then little do you know, it just bounces right back up, right? So I think the point of emphasis here is as long as you stay the course and you are, the word we use is DCA, dollar cost averaging, you're putting in a certain amount every month, regardless of if the market is up or the market is down. And if you do this over time, the market has proved to provide you with returns. The S&P 500 has returned since its existence an average of 10% per year. And that amount is actually increasing since 1986. It's around 11 to 12% per year. So I hope that answers your question. And please, at any time, feel free to object or ask any questions, interrupt me, and inshallah, we can try to hit that.
I'm gonna just double down on Muhammad's point for a second. There is the stock market's a long-term game, right? If we look at the past 50 years, of those 50 years, 40 of them, the stock market went up. And of those, we had about 13 years where the market had returns between 10 to 20%, and only 2 years where the losses were between 10 to 20%. So if we focus kind of on a microcosm of these two couple of years of the market going down, of course, we're going to have fear, we're going to have panic in our hearts. But remembering that this is a long-term game, you invest now, hopefully you dollar cost average, you're able to add some more, and that money grows. I will even look at just a 1 year paradigm. The market itself does about 30% of its biggest shifts on just 7 days. 7 days. Um, and if we are not invested on those 7 days, we're losing out on a tremendous potential growth in our portfolio. So kind of having that long-term horizon, staying in the market, weathering the tides, understanding that markets do go up and they do go down, but it's a long-term time horizon thing. And if we're trying to pop in, pop out, we're only going to be hurting ourselves and shooting ourselves in the foot.
I love that. Thank you so much. And it's so important that you mentioned that this is a long-term game. It's a long-term strategy because a lot of people want to have short-term goals, right? But when it comes to there's like there's different assets you could invest in depending on what your goals are. But then we're noticing from Musaffa's standpoint, a lot of people are nervous to invest because of the risk. And then I said this in a previous webinar that risk is what makes it halal. If it wasn't risky, then you shouldn't be probably investing in it. That's probably like fixed income or
Absolutely.
something. So, and actually investing, you're more likely to, inshallah, make money from investing than saving it in your drawer because inflation is making that your dollar worth less. Um, and so I love what you brothers and what Crescent is doing because you're kind of holding your client's hand from the beginning up until inshallah they see returns, right? And that beginning stage where people are all sort of in like that we're in this stage of like misconceptions about investing, unsure of a lack of clarity of how to even begin. It's overwhelming, right? There's just so much research, um, so much to learn before you even embark on this path. So having guidance from advisors is really, really important and helpful. I see more questions in the chat. I do want to give you guys the opportunity to share your screen or workshop, and then I can share a little bit about Musaffa's platform. But do you guys want to take it over and uh, go through that worksheet?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want to respond to Brother Yazan's question very quickly? Kashif, do you want to take that one or do you see
I'll
it?
take it right after, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
Well, as you're pulling this up, I'm going to cover a portion of Brother Ahmed's question there, which is ourselves as well as Musaffa use the AOFI method. Please do not quiz me on what AOFI is. I forget every 5 seconds exactly what the acronym stands for, but they're an international accreditation agency for kind of putting out halal and Sharia compliant accounting standards for organizations in the financial space. So we do use their standards, and in this activity, we'll talk about exactly what those two standards are and mean. And this is a very engaging, interactive activity. So to get everyone warmed up as we work on this, I'd love if everyone just puts in the chat where you're from, and what time it is that you're joining right now.
I'd also want to ask, do you guys see my screen? Do you see
Yeah,
a
I can see
Mustafa
it.
screen? Okay. I'm going to quickly put this little worksheet here. Um, and inshallah, as you are responding to Brother Kashif's question, I want to introduce you guys to this activity. So this is something me and Brother Kashif developed a couple months ago to kind of walk clients through exactly what goes into, the AOFI standards or halal stock screening. And these are all, like Brother Kashif said, set by the largest Islamic accounting and auditing organization in the world, based in Bahrain. And I want to emphasize the three important thresholds or the three important aspects of every company we're going to look at and Musaffa looks at when they do their calculations because Musaffa is based on AOFI, correct? So I want to start with business activity. Actually, Brother Kashif, you're going to take business activity. I'm going to take financial ratios. And you can go ahead.
Of course. So on business activities, the AOFI framework says that a company is impermissible if more than 5% of the business activities comes from a haram income source. So these haram sources are things like alcohol, tobacco, gambling, things that we ourselves should not consume or be involved with. But then also things that are impermissible for us to even be adjacent to. That'd be something like banking, finance, insurance, all those kind of sources. Additionally, now defense and that has sparked up as a third category of these impermissible categories. So in this activity here, Jazakallah khair, Brother Muhammad, for pulling this up, we have a list of 10 companies, and we'll go through and kind of flag which ones are permissible or impermissible. Is that exactly what you thought doing today, Muhammad, or do we want to let the audience
Absolutely.
kind of?
Absolutely. No, we'll go through and we'll ask people to put their thoughts in the chat. I just want to quickly cover financial ratio because this one does require a little bit more than an assumption if you know the company, right? I'll go ahead and give you a little spoiler. If you see JPM or JP Morgan, we know that's a bank, so that one wouldn't pass through the business activity, first of all. So if your company or the business you're looking into passes through that business activity filter, we're going to go into financial ratio. What is financial ratio? How is it set by AOFI? The true figure is set by interest-bearing debt over the market capitalization of the company or the total value of the company. How do you identify the total value of a company? You take the number of shares that exist, you just multiply it by the current stock price, right? So in this activity, to simplify it, we're going to do current liabilities divided by the market cap. Because interest-bearing debt can be a little bit tougher to calculate and we'd have to really dig into the balance sheet, this is what Musaffa does for you. And they update it as soon as they can. So whenever new quarterly earnings come out, they update that for you. But for simplicity reasons, we're just going to take the current liabilities over the market cap. And if that passes 30%, meaning that the company has a debt to equity ratio of over 30%, it would be considered non-halal or non-investable. And if it's under, then it would pass that filter. And lastly is the ESG ethical. This is one that we answered a question about from Sister Nusrat about how do you invest in companies that you feel, aren't right from a moral or ethical perspective. So that's going to be the last filter. And this is going to primarily include companies that are involved in defense, contracting, possibly polluting the environment, as you'll see in the example. But inshallah, let's not waste any time. Let's get into the activity. I'm going to zoom out here and let's walk through maybe 5 examples and see what you guys come up with and how we can potentially guide you. Please do not pull up Musaffa as that would be considered cheating, but we will show you each one in Musaffa and how you can kind of even get a detailed report as well.
Yeah. As we're going through this,
Yep.
great question in the chat that I kind of neglected to mention. Why the 5% is permissible? Why do we allow for this 5%? And that's because no company out there is 100% pure. We'll have example is airlines. A lot of airlines, 90% of the business is completely Sharia compliant, completely halal by the ratings agencies, by the standards out there. However, there is a small, very, very small portion of their revenue that comes from maybe alcohol sales on the flights. And if we were to try and really grade that and understand that, most companies don't even break that on their balance sheets. So it's almost impossible to go find companies that are true 100% not engaged in any non-permissible business activities. So that's why they've allowed for that 5% variance. And then you can use Musaffa's calculator at the end of the year to kind of figure out what percentage may come from this. But yeah, let's go through this. So we got our first company over there is JPM. Sound off in the chat. You can put 1, 2, or 3. 1 being business activities being impermissible, 2 being financial ratios impermissible, and 3 being kind of an ESG that the company may be harming or hurting Muslims or otherwise would not be something that is clean and pure. Just drop the number in there. What do you think about JPM? Where does it fall on these flaggings? Hey, you guys nailed it. JPM, as Mohammed kind of spoiled, alhamdulillah, is a financial company, JP Morgan. Next up, we've got BUD. Why don't we drop in what is BUD? Right? Yes. BUD, what is the company and where does it fall? Is it impermissible for 1, impermissible for 2, impermissible for 3, or is it permissible in all 3? Azam nailed it, mashallah. BUD is Budweiser. I like to think that that's impermissible on the first one. They sell alcohol. Next up, what do we got there?
1% of their sales come from non-alcoholic beer.
Ha! So I can invest in 1% of the company.
Yeah. Okay,
Next up, we got COST.
Can I take this one?
Please do.
I really like this one because it falls just in line with your example about the airlines. This is Costco. We all shop there. Massive company. It's been a great stock over the last couple of years. And off of assumption, their financials look good. You'd assume that this is an investable company. Where do you think, if you had to guess or assume, Costco would be flagged? If you can put that in the chat. Let's see if you guys have an idea why. Ibrahim and Ahmed say interest. It is not interest, actually. Their financial ratio does check out. I'll give you guys, somebody said ESG, but he hasn't said high debt. Okay, well, I guess then I have to reveal what it is. It's actually business activity. Um, 8% of Costco's sales, and this is just the in-depth that Musaffa will break down for you. 8% of Costco's sales come from alcohol, tobacco, and pork products. That slightly, but it does cross our threshold of 5% set by AOFI. Therefore, Costco is actually non-investable from the business activity threshold. I guess I'll take over the next one. And we don't have to go through every single one, but let's skip to one that I want to really emphasize on is LMT. Does anybody know what LMT is or what they do? So we have some engineers in here, they probably would know. Larson and Turo. I'm not sure exactly what that is. Lockheed Martin from Yazan. Yes, it is Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin is engaged in building aircrafts that we often see used in defense. I'm not sure exactly which aircraft, but you see all the massive F-35s that come out of the United States that are then used to drop bombs on people from the sky. Terrible way to do business. So therefore, this is one that actually crosses out on the ESG filter. It can be from a solely business activity threshold. It can check off because we don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to use those flights on, but we can assume what they're going to use them on, right? From a financial ratio perspective, it passes. Their financials look good. But from an ethical perspective, we absolutely want to avoid investing in this company.
Yep.
And let's just do one more. Lastly is CELH. This is Celsius Energy. I'm not sure if any of you drink energy drinks, but you might be familiar with the company. Any assumption on if this one checks out or not?
And we're going to exclude the headline from a few months ago where some Celsius products
Yes.
mislabeled.
That was an accident after all. So Shaista says ethical. Okay, great guess. It's ethical from our perspective as well. Any idea on the business activity or the financial ratio?
And the way that if you guys want to do the hard work yourself, and we'll show you a quick shortcut in a second to get around it, but you'd go into the company's websites, and they have their annual financial reports. These are all US companies we're using in this example, but this works in the case of companies traded on the FTSE, on the Kakiran, on the Hang Seng. All companies internationally are required to publish both quarterly and annual reports. In the US, it's called a 10K for an annual report or a 10Q for a quarterly report. And that will break down line by line, where their revenue is coming from, as well as where the company is financing itself. In most cases, from my finance background, getting my master's in finance, you'll pour through almost 100 pages to try and digest this information. And then you're out there trying to calculate almost on a day-by-day basis in some of these companies' cases where there's rapid growth, what portion of debt is coming from interesting activities compared to its market cap. So it's truly a lot of work that, mashallah, you guys are nailing in this session. But there is a tool that you guys can use to kind of do all the hard work for you. Does anyone know the name of that tool by chance? Spoiler alert, Nusrat really loves the tool.
I was actually confused. I was like, what tool are you talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
Ahmed says Mustafa.
We're going to assume that's a spelling error as a typo for Musaffa, but yes, Musaffa can do this hard work for you. So why don't we give an example of
Yeah,
how
let's do an example.
Musaffa.
I actually have one ready. So Celsius, after all, checks out as halal on Musaffa's list. And if you want to see why exactly, you can get a detailed report by hitting detailed report. And you actually see a breakdown. It passes on the business activity, it passes on the interest-bearing securities and assets, passes on the interest-bearing debt. Therefore, only 1% of their business comes from non-halal sources. Now, a really cool thing about Musaffa is it'll break down doubtful as well. So sometimes it's not as clear as we think, and there's some revenues coming from a gray area. So maybe the best assumption there would be if a majority of the revenues are coming from doubtful sources, then let's avoid investing in it. I want to give an example of a company that does not pass for their financials is AT&T, right? Off of a assumption, AT&T, they build cellular towers. They allow us to use our phones. You'd assume that it's a halal company, but why? If we check out the Sharia compliance report, you are going to see that they have a large amount of interest-bearing debt, and from a business activity perspective, they don't pass. Now, this business activity perspective is not where I want to emphasize. It might be just due to their financing options that they do for their phones, but it's the financials that I want to emphasize. A company like AT&T that needs to spend a lot on building out their infrastructure has to take in a lot of debt, right? That they're going to owe a lot of interest on. Therefore, a majority of their debt is interest bearing as compared to the valuation of the company as a whole. It's one of those companies that has to constantly be in debt to make money. So those are two great examples. And with the last 2 minutes that I have before Nusrat kicks me off, I want to give you guys a very valuable piece of information is how to do this from a very basic perspective yourself in 30 seconds. So take a look here. Everybody has Google. You look up the stock. You can open up the Google Finance option right here, and you can actually see the balance sheet and get that interest bearing, that liabilities figure from right here. You can see the latest earnings. The total liabilities here is 1.7 billion. Now, all you have to do is look at that market cap of the company, and you can get a fair guess on if it's going to pass the financial ratios. Now, this is where Musaffa does the hard work for you, is identifying how much of that debt is interest bearing. All the debt may not be interest bearing, and where we want to identify if it's halal or haram is how much of that debt is interest bearing as compared to the valuation of the company. That is all from us for the activity. I hope it benefited. I see a question from Brother Azam. Can we do MDLZ, please?
So MDLZ is actually a great example of this third category that Musaffa has, halal, not halal, and then doubtful. Doubtful would be if it's unknown categories kind of surpass that 5% threshold. So the case might be a snack food company like Mondelez, where maybe say 3%, and this is just a rough example because I'm not looking at the direct chart, is coming from something impermissible. But then maybe there's a 2 to 3% that we aren't exactly sure if we can ascertain exactly what this is coming from. They might call it, fast casual snacks, and we don't know if that's maybe the chicharrones, their pork rinds sales. So we just on Musaffa's platform, they're calling this doubtful and something that is maybe recommended by Musaffa to not invest in.
And you get this detailed breakdown right here. Actually tells you exactly where the doubtful revenue is coming from through their biscuits and their gum and candy department. So it gets that detailed that you wouldn't assume that Mondelez would be non-Sharia, but it is doubtful based on these revenue sources.
Yeah. And there's a hadith from Prophet ﷺ that goes, the end of it, reported by Ibn Bashir, is that whoever avoids doubtful matters clears his liability regarding his religion and his honor. So we're oftentimes recommended to just avoid the doubtful if we can. If there is a clear-cut green place to go, a clear-cut good place to go, stick to that and try and avoid the doubtful.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. This was honestly so incredibly helpful, mashallah, to see the breakdown. I can share a little bit more details, but then I want to save some time for Q&A because I'm sure people have questions, and then we also got a lot of questions on the Google form. So some nuances I would love to add is that Musaffa will eventually have the other methodologies as well, inshallah. So depending on where you're from, you'll be able to see. So the gist is that all these different methodologies are they're kind of influenced by the local rulings. So how the methodology is based or used in Malaysia may be different from how it's used in Saudi, for example, just by the local nuances. And so the AFE though is the most internationally recognized, and it's the more of a global standard. So that's why Musaffa uses AFE. Now AFE provides the principles, but the financial computation, the way we apply it, it could be different for different companies, right? Because we often get people being like, why does Musaffa say this company is halal, but then another group says this company is not halal? A lot of it depends on where the financials, like the init. So we get for ours from FactSet. And so FactSet's known to be very institutional, very granular. That's why we have like legit human analysts. Like we have like 20 analysts working in Uzbekistan. Some of the smartest people I've ever met, nonstop working, like going through each detail of the financials to make sure um, that it's accurate. And so, um, Dilshad, our CEO, often will say that one thing he doesn't want on the day of judgment is like for us to then influence thousands of Muslims to invest in a company that may not be halal. Like that's what, that may not be halal. So he puts a lot of emphasis on the financial the computation of it. And um, another thing that we're adding is, and I'll share my screen here. We've also added, so if you go on, I'm really liking NVIDIA now. So I know I'm not the only one. So NVIDIA is halal, alhamdulillah. I pray that it stays halal, but it's veering close. So if you see the C minus, right? And the reason why, so Musaffa offers the grading system from like A to I believe D, and so you can have two people taking an exam, and let's say to pass, you have to pass 70% or above. So let's say Bilal gets 71 and then Ahmed gets 99. They both technically passed. The one like who would you ask to go fix your plumbing? Like you ask like the guy who got the 99%, right? So in this case, some companies do technically financially pass, but they may not be as passable as like other companies. So you can see that Nvidia got a C minus. Let's see what Apple got. Okay, God, I clicked the wrong Apple. So Apple has a C. So in comparison, like Apple would be more Sharia compliant on the spectrum of grading than NVIDIA. So if someone is more, I would say conservative, or if they would prefer to invest in companies that pass that threshold in a more clean way, then you can use these references. Another thing is that Brother Kashif said it perfectly, like the 5% rule that these boards allow. And while it's not mentioned in the Quran and Hadith, these 5%, um, you know, it's there's like a Sharia principle of what is like the bare minimum that is accepted, that like the tolerated, right? So 5% is tolerated. There was a lot of research done that if you did 10%, then that's too much. It might even that 10% is like an altering of the entire financial structure of that company, like 10% of it being haram. And then they said that if you did less than 5%, almost no companies would fit the bill for that one. So that 5% that's permissible, if you buy like 10 stocks of Nvidia and then you sell it, and if you make any of that profit needs to be purified. So then Musaffa offers you a purification calculator. So through that, you can see uh, how much of that profit you need to then donate to charity if you want to be completely purified. Since the Sharia does allow 5% of it to be impermissible. We also get questions of like about the doubtful, and the goal is like you ideally should if you thought it really depends on your values and where you sit on that spectrum, but we don't encourage people to invest in doubtful. Some people will invest in doubtful investments and then do the purification for it later. Again, it's all depending on your personal preference about it. um, and another thing I wanted to say, so let's go through NVIDIA. We're also offering, and how Brother Muhammad was saying, how so many people are interested in the ESG component of it, right? So we have a mystery report. So now Musaffa is now grading stocks, and it's currently in beta. So not all of the stocks have this report, but there's a score that we give it depending on community impact, social controversies, labor practices and human rights, product and sector involvement, environmental responsibility, and ethical and governance. So now you can see a lot of the more popular stocks. You can see how they pass on social responsibility. And there's also a community element of it too. So depending, you can see how the community is feeling about a particular stock, depending on, you know, NVIDIA is Sharia compliant, but
Mhm.
it just joined hands with Palantir, and we don't like Palantir. So for example, these things can influence someone from just leaving NVIDIA. I mean, not investing in NVIDIA. Um, and the only other thing I would share is if you are a beginner in investing and you don't want to self-select particular stocks, you can always invest in an ETF, which is just a basket of stocks. And it's a good way to diversify. So you're not investing in just one stock and then having, if the stock doesn't do well, your entire portfolio can tank. If you invest in an ETF, inshallah, you have a little bit more diversified, a little bit more diversity and a little bit more balance. Um, and there are halal ETFs as well. And you can use the screener to see what's halal in your other ETFs that are halal.
That's what I think that's a fantastic point and a good segue into how Musaffa and Crescent and financial advisors work hand in hand.
Mm.
Is individuals can by all means kind of use a tool like Musaffa to do the screening of what company is permissible or impermissible, right? You guys have done that hard work for them. But then what our value and the value that Mohammed and I can provide, looking at our charts and tables all day, is finding these valuable companies that are Sharia compliant. Because now once we filter down, right, of the S&P 500, you kick out about 150 companies for being in impermissible business sources, about another 50 to 60 for being impermissible financial ratios. You're left with about 150, 200 companies after you kick out the ESG as well. So that's a small pool to play with. So that's why people oftentimes come to Mohammed and myself and Crescent, the team, to see where I can be aligning these values and not doing that hard work of picking the stocks. Of I know what's permissible, impermissible, but you guys go do the hard work of figuring out where the value is going to be 5, 10 years down the road. Or maybe in the case of a new portfolio Mohammed and I have put together, maybe there's value in the next 2, 3 weeks. And there's a couple of companies that we're always watching there and saying, hey, this is a shorter term play, but oftentimes we are picking these value-based companies that will provide that long-term growth to individuals. So that's how Musaffa and a financial advisor work hand in hand, is we're using a lot of the Musaffa ratings and the Musaffa calculations on Sharia or non-Sharia compliance or permissible, impermissible, but then our financial knowledge to see where the company is going to go down the road and how we can best set our clients up for success.
Yeah, and I love that, Brother Kasha, because you mentioned something, I think it was Muhammad who mentioned this earlier about that you approach it in a holistic way. So I love how you take into account the people's story. So I love the case examples that you brought up capture it perfectly. You take like where they've been and where they want to go, and having someone like having a wealth advisor know your journey and know exactly like your risk tolerance and the kind of financial knowledge that you guys have. I would love to get advice from you both, inshallah, in the future. I want to make some money. But actually, that's actually a good question. So people always ask, like, do I need to have a lot of money to begin? And so, how do you guide someone through these kind of questions of like, I don't have enough, or they're waiting for perfection to start.
That's a fantastic question. I tell people you don't need any money to start, basically. You just need to have the desire to want to make some money. And in that regards to the desire to go, want to go get a job that will help you get some money down the road, or something that will help you stem that capital. But we see a lot of college students, a lot of Muhammad and my friends from undergraduate, from uni, that come to us and are now asking these financial questions. So for that, maybe you're not investing right away, but you're building that financial discipline and that financial plan that once you have that money coming in, you're able to work a lot more successful. I tell everyone, you spend 4 years in uni, 4 years in college, and you're living on a diet of pizza and ramen. It's not the healthiest thing in the world, but it's pretty financially sound, pretty financially safe. If you can continue that budgets for a few more years after college and you're not letting the money kind of take hold of you and you're not going wild buying steak dinners, then you're setting yourself up for a lot of success. So if someone has $1 million or no dollars, they're still the perfect person to come talk to a wealth advisor and understand how they can best have their money work for them and escape the rat race of them working for their money. Muhammad had something to say about that as well.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on the head, but the one thing I would say, and this relates right back to Sister Nusrat's question, is you can start if you don't have a lot, but the hardest thing to do it's a mental it's a mental thing. It's convincing yourself I'm actually going to do this, right? Just sitting in multiple introduction meetings with clients who are ready to start, like they've already passed their emergency cash threshold. They can allocate cash towards their investments every month. It's just making sure that you're ready to do it and you can do an amount that you're comfortable doing. That is not going to affect your daily life, you know? Look at it like it's money leaving my bank account that's extra that I don't need today. So I'd rather have it growing for me. And I always tell people that when you start and you're a couple months down the road, you're going to feel a lot better about your situation than where you were a couple months ago.
I think you also said something very powerful there is an emergency fund is key. We love to use what we call a financial pyramid. And that refers to have some money in your checking account to cover your weekly expenses, your monthly expenses. I say about 3 months worth of expenses should be in your checking account sitting out there. So if you're maybe spending $700 on gas and groceries, aim for about $2,100 just sitting in your checking accounts. Then an emergency fund, about 3 to 6 months worth of your income. Should the worst happen, you lose your job, you at least have a place to pull that from. And that doesn't have to be sitting in a bank account. Oftentimes, that's where someone first starts their investing journey with us, in that we are finding capital protection products, ones that beat inflation or just slightly eke it out. They're not looking for crazy gains here. It's just their money to stay with the same purchasing power it did. And we aim for about 3 to 6 months worth of income over there. So it's easily liquidatable, and someone might run into an issue where they need to buy a new car, they can't pay their rent 1 month. Easily liquidate your money, put it in your bank account, and pay that bill. And then the third one, as part of this foundation of this pyramid, is your retirement. So if you have the opportunity for a 401k through work, or I know they have pension schemes in the UK, we have some of those members in the audience. I'm unfortunately not familiar with the Indian climates, but also putting some capital aside for that, especially if you have a tax advantage mechanism, is a great way to start building out the foundation of your pyramid. And then we can move to the next level, which is let's start investing a little bit more money for the shorter term. Maybe we want to go for Umrah, we want to go for Hajj. We want to bring our parents over from wherever they are, or have a nikah, have a wedding. You'd use that secondary layer to do that. But first, got to have your foundation taken care of. And that's kind of where we approach most clients with their finances. And actually, talking about enough money to invest, I do say, yes, you can start with practically nothing, start with $5. But the truth is, we're going out to buy, say, an ETF, for example. You're allowed to do fractional shares, which means maybe it's trading at $150 and you only have $5 to invest. So you're buying a small, maybe 3% portion of that. That does give you some exposure, but as your income goes higher, as much as the amount you have available to invest goes higher, you're able to diversify a lot more. With smaller amounts of money, unfortunately, you're not able to diversify as much. And diversification is so powerful because if one company slips and falls, if one sector slips and falls, if one country's economy slips and falls, we don't want you to be kind of hung out to dry. So it's diversification is key, and a little more capital allows you to diversify a little more eloquently.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Muhammad. Any closing words?
Closing words. The only thing I would add to Brother Kashif's comment is when it comes to identifying these three categories, right? Your current cash, your checkings account, and once you pass that threshold where you start your journey on investing, is there so many different investment products and different sectors and different, I guess we say, categories where you can allocate your money with different goals, right? Especially in that second category where we're saving for an emergency fund, we have the goal of preserving our capital. So number one thing is we don't want that money to go down, right? So you have all these amazing options like sukuk, and alhamdulillah, we're living at a time where major Muslim financial companies have developed sukuk that they sell to us through ETFs that we can access, and we can receive fixed income in a halal way. And I wish we had more time to go into depths of how sukuk work and all the good stuff. But inshallah, for another time, we appreciate everybody joining. I can answer Brother Rashid's question quickly. Thanks for the presentation. Thank you for attending. May I ask, what are Crescent's fees? What are the minimum wealth threshold? Are you operating authorized in Canada? So to answer the first question, what are Crescent fees? We charge a fee based on assets under management. So total assets under management, apart from any child savings accounts, which we don't charge fees on. We charge a 1.35% annually. That's breaking down through the quarters. What's the minimum wealth threshold? There is no minimum wealth threshold. We see everybody, all consultations are free. The only time we ever charge anything is if we actually manage your investments. Once again, if you're also a client, all consultations are also free. Anytime you have a question, you come in, we see you. Are you operating authorized in Canada? We can serve you if you're in Canada as long as you have a US address to use. It's kind of tricky when it comes to that. But we do have international clients that have addresses in the US that we can tie the accounts to, and it's totally fine to, service them.
And then on Brother Yezin's question, and I'll wrap up and she'll give back to Sister Nusrat. On why not 100% stocks. I can't find that exact paper, but I'm familiar with the methodology. Oftentimes, we also recommend a non-100% stock-based portfolio, and kind of based on your age, risk tolerance, and financial goals. We may say 80% stocks, 20% fixed income, and this would be sukuks in our case. Or we may go the opposite, which is 20% stocks and equities and 80% fixed income. And the real reason we use that is fixed income is oftentimes less volatile, so it allows us to hit those risk tolerances individuals have. Someone Muhammad my age, we wake up, especially Muhammad and myself, being in the financial space, we'll wake up one day, see our accounts down 5%. We oftentimes are buying more.
Yeah.
However, if it's my parents who are in their 70s and they're waking up with 5%, they would be shooting me. So definitely having a little more of a risk prevention there. But Brother Yazin, thank you so much for the link. I'll watch that after the session, inshallah, and I'll reach back out to you. One thing I want to leave you with before I pass this off is having a barakah mindset is very key. That everything we're doing, and the reason we're looking at ethical investing of this halal mindset is that we're not investing just for the dunya, but it's for the akhirah. That if we are chasing the almighty dollar, if we're trying to get as much capital as we can today, and we're investing in things that are maybe outside of our compliance framework, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot for the millions of years, the infinity after we leave this mortal plane. So definitely have that barakah mindset that any potential money we're not making today is an investment in our Jannah bank account. Same way that donations go. If you give a $5 donation today, that's not $5 you can't invest, but it's $5 you put into your potential bank account in Jannah.
Very well said. Jazakallah khair.
MashaAllah, beautiful, beautiful way to end it. Thank you both so much. This session was so informative, and both of you carried so much warmth and knowledge. MashaAllah. So may Allah bless you. May Allah bless Crescent. May Allah bless our relationship and our partnership. And I'm we have everyone's emails, I believe, if you had signed up originally. So inshallah, we'll reach back out. Some of you came late, asked for the recording. It's being recorded. Inshallah, we can send out. Do you guys have an email you can put in the chat if you want? Someone, I got some private messages of emails. I'll share mine from the Musaffa point, and then so you can reach out to us if you have any other further questions, or if you want to join Crescent, which I highly recommend, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Sister Nusrat, for putting this together.
Of course, thank you
I
both so
really
much for
appreciate it.
joining.
Of course. Assalamu alaikum.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.